You don't wake up thinking you're being judged. You get dressed, you go to work, you cross the street, you pay your bills. Nothing feels unusual. And yet, every action you take leaves a trace. Not because you broke a rule, but because you exist inside a system that never stops watching patterns. China's social credit system is often described as surveillance, but that word is too simple. This isn't just about being watched. It's about being evaluated, continuously, quietly, automatically. To understand this system, you don't start with cameras or scores. You start with behavior. Every society tries to shape behavior. Laws punish, norms pressure, culture nudges. China's approach does something different. It doesn't wait for mistakes. It tracks signals, your financial habits, your social interactions, your compliance, your reliability, not as isolated events, but as a pattern that slowly defines who you are. You don't receive a verdict, you accumulate a profile. And once behavior becomes data, judgment no longer needs intention. The social credit system did not begin as one single database. It emerged from many local experiments. Cities, provinces, industries, each testing how trust could be quantified. Could a person's reliability be measured the same way as a company's creditworthiness? Could behavior predict future compliance? Over time, these experiments began to align, not into one giant score as often portrayed, but into an ecosystem of evaluations. Some systems reward, some restrict, some merely observe, but together they change incentives. And incentives change behavior long before punishment ever appears. If you know your actions affect future access, you adapt. You avoid risk. You avoid deviation. You avoid visibility. Not because someone tells you to, but because prediction becomes survival. This is where the system becomes powerful. You don't need to be forced. You begin to self-regulate. Travel privileges, loan access, job. Opportunities. They don't disappear suddenly. They quietly become conditional. Good standing opens doors. Bad standing closes them. And the criteria are not always clear. Opacity is not a flaw here, it's a feature, because uncertainty keeps people cautious. The system doesn't need to control everyone, it only needs to make examples visible. Blacklists, public disclosures, restricted mobility. These moments are rare enough to feel exceptional, but common enough to shape expectations. You don't need to experience consequences yourself. Seeing them is enough. This is not fear in the dramatic sense. It's anticipation. You begin to ask yourself small questions. Is this worth it? Will this be recorded? Could this affect me later? And slowly your range of behavior narrows. Not through violence, through optimization. The social credit system also blurs the line between public and private life. Actions that once belonged to personal space now carry social weight. Who you associate with, how you express dissent, how predictable you appear. Trust is no longer relational, it's procedural. You are not trusted because someone knows you. You are trusted because your data behaves. This changes identity. You are no longer just a person. You are a pattern, a collection of probabilities, a forecast, and forecasts are acted upon before events happen. Critics often ask whether this system is total. It isn't. It's fragmented, uneven, still evolving. But that doesn't make it weak. It makes it adaptable, because the power lies not in perfection, but in direction. Behavior begins to align with what the system rewards, not because people agree with it, but because friction is exhausting. Resistance becomes costly. Compliance becomes convenient. Over time, convenience wins. There is another layer that makes this system effective. It changes how decisions feel. In an environment where actions are tracked, choices stop feeling neutral. Every decision carries a hidden weight, not because the consequence is immediate, but because it is possible. This creates decision fatigue. You don't ask, what do I want? You ask, what will this look like later? The cost of thinking rises, so people simplify. They choose predictability. They repeat safe behaviors. They stop exploring edge cases, not because they are forbidden, but because they are tiring. This is how a system reduces diversity without banning it. Another subtle shift happens in time. Punishment works after a rule is broken. Prediction works before. When a system predicts behavior, it no longer reacts. It pre-adjusts. Opportunities appear or disappear quietly. Invitations stop arriving. Paths narrow. Nothing dramatic happens, which makes it harder to point to a moment where freedom was lost, because nothing was taken. It was simply never offered. This is why predictive systems are more stable than coercive ones. Force creates resistance. Prediction creates compliance, not because people agree, but because friction accumulates. The more often a system nudges behavior, the more people internalize its logic. Eventually, they stop noticing the nudge. Parents warn children. Friends advise friends, colleagues correct each other. Control becomes social, and social control feels voluntary. Another consequence is silence. Not silence imposed by censorship, but silence produced by calculation. When speaking carries unknown future costs, many people choose to say less. Not nothing, just less. Opinions become vague, criticism becomes indirect, humor becomes careful, language adapts, and when language adapts, thought follows. Because thinking freely requires speaking freely, even internally. Over time, people stop rehearsing certain ideas, not because they are forbidden, but because they feel impractical. This is how imagination contracts, not abruptly, gradually. The system doesn't need to know what you think. It only needs to shape what you practice thinking, and practice becomes habit. From the outside, this still looks orderly, efficient, stable, but stability has a cost. Innovation slows. Trust becomes conditional, creativity becomes risky, and risk is the first thing people learn to avoid. What makes this system particularly modern is that it does not rely on belief. You don't have to believe in it. You don't have to support it. You only have to behave within it. That is enough. Because behavior feeds data. Data feeds prediction. Prediction feeds control. And the loop closes quietly. This is not a system that demands loyalty. It demands consistency. And consistency is easier than conviction. You are human. And being human means you're shaped by forces you don't even see. Subscribe and start understanding yourself and the world differently.